Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes. I'm joined by Chris McIlwain, the mighty Quinn, and Sean Conley. The score today, Celtic 1 Hearts 2, and I'm going to come to yourself first, Quinny, because we didn't get a chance to speak to you before the game or at half-time. Sum up where that all went wrong for you today.
Oh, well, I think really where it does all go wrong today is like it was parachuted in like 48 hours ago to get ready for this game. I think like that's kind of like the first half, like there was some, honestly, like the first half we played so well at times. The first like 20 or 30 minutes, some of the stuff we were doing was really nice. On another day, we take some of those chances. The game's totally different. But as the game went on, especially when we went through those little changes, when we made a few subs and everything, it just felt like somebody said in the chat, maybe you, Paul John, like everybody just lost track of the script. Who's where? Where am I going? What am I doing? And so I think really where it was won and lost today was probably the lead time the manager had for the game, probably. Because before everything got disrupted, we looked good.
Listen, see at half-time, you and Sean would have been going toe-to-toe on that one. Sean didn't agree that we were that great in the first half. And to be honest with you, I'm watching the second half, Sean, and I did think it was quite shambolic, disjointed. I don't think everybody knew what was going on. And we've got to get to the root of that, Sean. I think Quinny's right. I mean, I said before the game, there's two ways you can play it. You can play it safe or you can take a risk. I think Nancy took a risk insofar as he tried to staple his identity within 48 hours into a team. That's very difficult to do, isn't it?
Yeah, we talked about it earlier. He's had 2, maximum 3 training sessions and it's completely changed the shape of the team. I'd say at halftime from the very start of the game, the players didn't look like they knew what they were doing. 4 minutes in, 2 players go to take the same throw-in, which is absolutely basic, fundamental. Who's on throw-ins, and they didn't know. So, if he's really determined, if Nancy's really determined that he's going to be playing this formation, he's got a lot of work to do. If this formation is going to be going out against Roma on Thursday, that's terrifying. We did none of the players. We talked about the positives in the first half. The positives in the first half were we were playing with good intensity, we were playing with good intentionality. There was quick passing, quick movement, but the shape was poor. The players didn't know what they were doing. We talked about Trusty being on this right hand side being unbalanced. With Yang did nothing. Trusty getting lots of time in the ball because the midfield was being man marked, but couldn't do anything with it. Negrin coming inside all the time. In the first 10 minutes, the 2 chances we get from Diaz and Maeda that you should do better with both of them are both long balls. Like, you telling me that's the system? Just chuck it over the top? You know, like, what are the chances in the second half? A deep cross from Kieran Tierney where Engels gets free and should do better. And then the Tierney goal, which is just a nothing, right? In terms of build-up play, there's nothing to it. It's just the ball breaks him in the box and it's a quality finish, you know? There was no cohesion. The whole team was disjointed, I felt, from the start, even if there was some positives. There was a lot of other bad looks as well. At one point, the camera goes to Paul Tisdale, who's literally sleeping in the stand. Nonsense getting his tactics or perceived tactics broadcast around the world with his markers on the whiteboard and the magnets. Callum McGregor is having to come off the pitch to see. I mean, that just speaks to the lack of preparedness, right? That he's having to come off the pitch to get tactical instructions. And then whatever those markers were supposed to be saying, it did not appear to be translated into the pitch either. Sorry, I've been ranting for a bit here, but I'll end it with a question. If Martin O'Neill is in charge tonight, do we win that game? And here's the second question that you can relate to. If Nancy comes in and actually just says, okay, play the same formation and we'll make tweaks instead, do we win that game? So even aside from the fact of whether O'Neill stays or not, if Nancy says, right, I'm not going to overhaul this in one day, do we win that game tonight?
See, the big thing for me, Sean, is we've kind of been through this quite a bit, having covered the games now into our 6th season. You get to you get a sense of right how to react, even though emotionally you're watching a game and it's affecting you. After the game, what I certainly don't want to do dive in on the manager here, because I think what Quinny said is right. He's been thrown and he's been parachuted into a situation, and his character is clearly, I'm going to do it my way, Chris. I'm doing this my way. This is my identity. My big concern about that was, if you have a shape or an idea of a styly player and approach, you need to have the players to fit that. And we've been saying all season, the quality is just not there. And if you've got a particular system that you're playing, and it forces you to bring in a player like Tuneke, for example, you said beforehand, Chris, he'll be doing his work before he arrives in Glasgow. If he has been, why is Tuneke playing? Because he's been so ineffective for me, in recent times. You don't change the fundamentals there. And I think he's tried to make so much changes. It's just not worked. And the quality isn't there. So there has to be a balance here, Chris. The root of the problem is the same, and we will get to it. And it is the way the club is being run. That's the root of the problem. There's a lot of people in the comment section here saying this one's on the players. The players were absolutely dysfunctional. They were confused at times. The captain's having to get off the park twice to go to the whiteboard. Sack the whiteboard, by the way. Sack the whiteboard. That's my chant. And the situation that you're left in there, Chris, is you've got the same group of players underperforming under Brendan Rodgers, who then performed under Martin O'Neill. Yeah, there was a few, close shaves under Martin's time as well, right? And then straight off the bat, this shows you the impact of the manager. You can't just say this is on the players. It shows you the impact of the manager, his approach, the shape, the structure of the team, the approach. What was Celtic's game plan today, Chris? Do you know?
No, it's very difficult to try and ascertain that from what we just watched. I mean, look, I agree with the guys. I think there were some positives in the first half. I spoke about them at half time. I thought there was something to build on there, but the second half capitulation was terrible, and we saw players revert to what we'd seen prior to Martin O'Neill coming in, which is really worrying. Now, look, it's food for thought for the manager. Wilfried Nancy, I think, and I said it on the podcast, so anyone can feel free to go back and recheck this, but I said I would have given Martin O'Neill until the cup final. I felt these three fixtures, inclusive of today, were not the right ones to bring in a new manager. But even I couldn't have imagined that the manager would come in and make wholesale changes for this game, wholesale changes with an untested, untried set of players, with and a system that they haven't been exposed to. And look, we said at the pre-match, we had both, well, we applauded the bravery of the manager and the respect, his desire to go and implement his own identity. We also said we had a fear about whether these players would be able to adapt so quickly to that. And I think we got our answer in today's game. So, yeah, for me, I think it's difficult to put too much on the manager in terms of the overall performance. I mean, a manager can't influence whether or not a professional footballer can make a 5-yard pass stick. And too often today, we saw players who should be the top players in the country unable to find a man from 4, 5, 6 yards, playing balls continually out of play, not reading the play. So you can't put all of that down to a system and a formation, right? The players do have to take some responsibility. But you have to take into factors as what did the manager expect to get out of these players? How much does he know about these players? Surely a manager can see that if a team's got momentum, you try and leverage that momentum. You don't tear it down and start again. So that for me is on the manager. And the fact the manager was brought in 48 hours ahead of what is, a game against our biggest rivals this season, and a team that are on merit and to their credit, top of the league. You bring a manager in, give him a couple of training sessions with the players and say, right, off you go, Gaffer. Go and do what you can do. So there's a colossal failure all round. I think there's collective responsibility. Players, the manager and his coaching staff are going to have to wisen up very, very quickly. And for goodness sake, club, get your strategy sorted out. You don't change a winning team. Why did we not carry our momentum through to get, biggest league game, carry on our European progress under Martin O'Neill and get us to a cup final? Why? I can't understand it. Strategically, what was the decision behind that?
And, the big thing for me, Chris, is because they know best. They know best.
Clearly not.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, clearly not.
This is the thing, right? So you can question the decision makers all you like. They know best. And there is someone who was sitting with his eyes closed. I don't know if he was meditating or sleeping, Quinny. Meditation, visualization, all that. was the football doctor. It was Paul Tisdale, very rarely seen. First time I remember seeing him actually up in the stand watching the game. That he, in terms of the team, that he plays a massive part in assembling. He is the identifier of talent, and he's played a huge part in the appointment and the appointment of Nancy. There is no doubt about it in relation to his part that has been played in bringing Nancy to the football club, Quinny. We're going to be revisiting that between now and the end of the season. As I said before, I'm not going to studs up on the manager at the moment. I don't think it was a good idea. Hindsight will show us that, to make so many changes in terms of the player shape of the team. What I would say to you, Chris, in relation to that, if something's flowing well and these passes, you're not even second guess, they're just happening, right? So we weren't making no simple passes under Brendan. Things were dysfunctional, things were falling to bits. Yep. Martin O'Neill comes in, it's all flowing. They're not even thinking about it. It's happening.
It's simple.
And it's momentum and it's confidence, you know. And then a new manager comes in and changes it all, so they're second guessing, and then somebody's running there because they don't really know the shape, and then you're misplaced in the pass, and it just looks completely dysfunctional again. Quinny, we got beat, of course we did, and we're disappointed about it. Can we read too much into this? Do you think that we need to revert back to looking at the roots of the issue of the way that the football club's being run, and this is just one element of it?
I don't think it really changes much, really, because like, we've even heard from Nancy himself that the club, somebody asked a pretty good question in one of the press conferences, and Nancy's response kind of it made it sound like the club had kind of said, let's talk about transfers in January. These are the guys we've been working on, or, you know, something like that. And he was quite quick to let me see what I've got to work with here. So we've all been saying since the summer, the club has to be working double time to make sure the January window fixes wrongs and all the rest of it. So I don't think today really changes anything. I don't think there's any judgment to be had, particularly for Nancy in this game. I think it is it's, you know, a difficult circumstance. And, you know, if a few things go a little bit differently, Dyson Maida's chances, particularly in the first half, it's a very fine margin. You know, they scored from a set piece for the second goal. I forget if the first one started from a set piece or not, or if it was from open play, but a game of very fine margins. In terms of Sean's question, if O'Neill was in charge today, I think we would have won it, because I think we would have been, I think we could have won this game quite early, because Hearts did take like 25 minutes to figure out what was going on, and we caught them really cold with some glaring chances. And I don't think that would have necessarily happened under O'Neill. I think it would have been a bit more of a methodical match, similar to maybe the St Mirren game, perhaps, you know, and, you know, we might have just about done it through the confidence that was growing, the bit of momentum that we had carrying into it. But I don't think there's any. Does it highlight the weaknesses in the squad? Probably it does. But again, it's one of those ones where really losing is the main thing of today, you know, and the club's job is to make sure that we're not losing these matches. And was bringing Nancy in right before this, now that we've seen it, like the best decision? Probably not. But I don't think it really changes the circumstance. I think we still need to spend mad in the summer, in January. And I think from what we've seen in this game, like what Nancy was trying to do, or how the team was trying to style out for it, like the little, he was talking as well, just maybe little tweaks, little changes. And basically the main tweak I would imagine came into this is we've only got 3 at the back. So for all intents and purposes, a lot of the kind of build-up play was very similar. But especially in the first 20 minutes, if you look at the chances we had 6 guys in the box. It looked like the last 10 minutes of the game in the first section of the match. And it was mainly by virtue of we just had another attacker on, and when, you know, the ball gets up to that end of the pitch, they go into the box, they get into the edge, the back post, and that sort of thing. And I think if you really fast forward that style of play, that really suits us domestically. We don't need 4 defenders. We barely need 2 most of the time, you know. And against Hearts at home, is that maybe was maybe too much of a tweak? Martin O'Neill might not have done that, might have had 4 at the back. I mean, you've got someone like Donovan maybe protecting a side of the pitch. It might have been a bit more stable.
Yeah, I get that. It would have been, and again, we were talking about risk, didn't we, before the game, playing it safe versus risk. We took the risk; it didn't pay off. Sean, there was a mention there about getting to January, and then obviously we have the financial ability to make a difference. My concern here is that we are putting all our eggs in the Paul Tisdale basket. Right, this is my big concern, because he has shown me nothing so far in his time at Celtic to suggest that he is indeed the football doctor or the talent spotter that he's selling himself as. And you know, I'm going to call it right now. Between now and the end of the season, I think there's going to be a huge amount of focus on the performance of Paul Tisdale. When you consider that he survived the cull, people were suggesting he was Brendan's man. He survived the cull. He wasn't Brendan's man. It's quite clear that he's Dermot Desmond's man. You look at his CV, you look at the managerial career, Team Bath, Exeter City, MK Dons, Bristol Rovers and Stevenage. All of a sudden, he is the head of football operations at Celtic Football Club. He has been given as much autonomy as possible to bring in management teams and also footballers. Are you confident that this man can identify the talent we need to freshen up this particular squad and give us enough quality to hopefully continue to, I think at the moment it's not even looking like a guaranteed League Cup in the League Cup final, but continue in the 4 tournaments that we are going to participate in here?
In a short answer, absolutely not. No, as you mentioned, the last public-facing employment that Paul Tisdale had was manager of Stevenage, where he got emptied after 21 games with a win percentage of 14. So, he was Exeter manager for 12 years without anyone picking him up. That doesn't speak to progression up the ladder. The guy's in his 50s. He's not been hiding his talent under the radar for the last 15 years without anyone noticing in England, right? Quinny there mentioned spend like mad in January. I wouldn't be confident that we sign a single first team player. That's for maybe one loan signing. Maybe that's it. I would not be confident of us signing a single first team ready player. I'd have us down for one project player on a permanent and 1 or 2 loan players who could contribute to the first team. And I would not put it beyond that. I'd say no one on 1st of January. I'd say no one by 15th of January. And I reckon those 2 to 3 players by the end of January. And I don't see it being any better than that. I think we'll probably win the League Cup. Maybe it'll take extra time. I don't see us progressing in Europe. We might make the knockouts with a home win against Utrecht. But then we'll get embarrassed in the knockout rounds, no matter who we're playing. And then the league, I'm not confident in the league even, and that's the state of affairs we're in at the moment. Paul Tisdale has done nothing to inspire confidence. Dermot Desmond has done nothing to inspire. None of the Celtic board have done anything to inspire any confidence. They've put all their energy this season into fighting with the Green Brigade and doing nothing else in terms of putting a functional team or on the pitch, management team, or any kind of backroom structure in place. So I'm very, very pessimistic, not just based on the fact we lost tonight, but long-term pessimistic. We've had Martin O'Neill and Brendan Rodgers both in the dugout this season. Brendan Rodgers can be a bit self-serving at times, but Martin O'Neill is absolutely a servant of this club. He speaks and acts like a servant of this club. Paul, you had Bruni on stage the other night. You talked about how he speaks and acts like a servant of this club. The people that we have at boardroom level, from Paul Tisdale and up, all act like they are owners of this club and they're just sharing the experience. They're allowing us to share in that experience, that they own this place, they run it, and they think they know best and they don't care what we think or what anyone else thinks. And to be honest, they're not doing a very good job in terms of, how do we measure results? Pretty crap.
See the thing, Sean. If you're active on social media, as I know Chris is, you will get a sense over the last few days, having been, let's be honest about it. Quinny's involved in this as well. The fan media have basically been shut out of the football club. They have refused to answer any questions in relation to it. They have told someone, not me, not Quinny, as far as I know, that it's under review, but basically been binned, right? Now, in the great scheme of things, it doesn't make a slight bit of difference as to what we do on Acsom. Anything that we get from the press conferences is clipped up and fired out as shorts on the socials. We don't use it to try and curry any kind of monetization, but we want to have a relationship with the club because it's our football club, right? So you would never refuse that opportunity. There's nothing better, Chris will tell you, Quinny will tell you, than speaking to Celtic players, speaking to the management team. We wanted to welcome Nancy to the football club. We were basically batted back and told it's not happening. But the reason I mentioned social media, Chris, is that there is a growing number of people who think that the pesky podcasters are all out for ourselves. We're only here to make money. We don't care about the football club. And it takes the focus away from those who are actually to blame for the situation that Celtic are in. I'm not overreacting because Hearts beat us today. This is the second time this season Hearts have beaten us. But you've got to look at the decision. Your quality of your life, the quality of this season will be based on the quality of the decisions you make, Chris, right? And you look at the decisions that have been made by this Celtic board. And I say the Celtic board, we all know who's making the big calls. Let's sack Brendan Rodgers, right? You can call it a resignation all you want. He got thanked for his resignation that he didn't actually put forward. He went in for a meeting to try and plan for January. He was told that night, thanks for your resignation. Martin O'Neill was offered the job, maybe even before Brendan Rodgers was told that it had been emptied. And then that was a decision made by the football club, right? Martin O'Neill then comes in. By the way, what a job he did. And what he proved is how the manager is involved in the performance of the team, right? But to make the change with these games coming up, Chris, right, has proven to be a huge gamble. We knew it was a huge gamble. But what happens if it doesn't work? Is that the podcaster's fault as well, yeah? Or is it maybe the people who are making the decisions for our football club? Is the focus on them the correct focus? I would say yes. Now, we could argue the toss as to how you go about that and how you approach it. Some people don't like ultra action and movement action and all this kind of stuff, Chris, but they are the focus of the ire, if you ask me. And we've got to focus on the changes that are happening at our football club, who's making the changes, and if they're the correct choices. Because, as I say, the quality of this season will be based on the choices made by the likes of Paul Tisdale, Dermot Desmond, Michael Nicholson, Peter Lowell, and the rest of them, who I'm not quite sure what they do for Celtic.
Yeah, look, on the fan media point that you made earlier, and you're right. I mean, I've seen some really, some points and perspectives on social media that are so wide of the mark, not only in regards to Acsom, but in fan media in general. And it's just one way I want to explain to people what fan media is and who it's comprised of. And I'm probably the biggest example of this on current podcast at the moment. It's fan media. It's made up of fans. It's made up of supporters. It's made up of people who care about Celtic Football Club, who've lived their lives supporting Celtic Football Club, where Celtic Football Club have comprised a huge, huge part of their upbringing, of their daily lives, of the revenue that they make. They pump it into the club because they want to. People make incredible sacrifices to support this football club, and quite a number of them are involved in Celtic fan media, and I'm one of them. I was somebody, just a supporter. I was given the opportunity by Paul John to come on to a Celtic State of Mind. And since I've been on here, I can tell you that there is not one member of this podcast or any other form of fan media that I've came across who are not passionate about the betterment of this club, right? This club belongs to the supporters. It's always been about supporters. The people who claim to own our club do not own it. They are temporary custodians, and they're entrusted with something that means an incredible amount to supporters. And all we ask, by virtue of them having this custody of the club and by virtue of them being in this incredibly privileged position, a position that we would all want to have, a responsibility that we would all feel privileged to have, all we ask is that you do the best job that you can possibly do, and you take responsibility and accountability not only for the success, which we've had, but the failures when it's not going right, the responsibility to change, right? What you don't do, what you never do, is you go on the attack and you go on the offensive against the very people whose lifeblood flows within that club, and that's the supporters. And that's what this club has spent, as you say, the best part of their energy doing in recent weeks. Now, from a strategic point of view, from an operational standpoint, Celtic supporters across the world, including us on here and the guys on the wider podcasts, we all come from different backgrounds, different diverse backgrounds, experiences. We've got different careers. Some of us have been, different levels of success. All of those opinions are valid. All of our opinions are valid, and we base it on what we see, and we relate it back to those experiences. I work in a business. If I made decisions that were in any way aligned to what the Celtic board have done in terms of running this football club, if I'd done that in my organisation, I would lose my job. I would be held accountable for it and I would lose my job, right? Why do we have a different standard at the club? Why? The person I feel sorry for tonight, and just last point on this, the person I feel sorry for tonight is Wilfred Nancy, because he has been put into an impossible situation. And it's a situation that could have been avoided had it been strategically planned, had it been well thought out, and had it been thought with a long-term view. But he's been put into the most challenging circumstance a new manager could come into. And I think that's incredibly unfair. He's not absolved the responsibility for today's result, but he was put in a position to fail. And that seems to be a hallmark of this board. We continually put the club and its personnel in a prime position to fail.
Well, in terms of those running the football club, they've obviously got no intention, Quinny, engaging. And a big part that I continually to go back to is the amount of people that engage with this platform or your platform and others on a daily basis. The level of engagement's off the scale, right? They talk about a quarterly fans forum. We have a fans forum every single day. Every day we have a fans forum right here. We're thousands and thousands of right now, 3,800 people tuning in. I can guarantee you a couple of hundred of them are trolls that are coming in to give us a dig, and that's what happens. That's football, right? But in terms of fans forums, we have them every single day on here. We try and give fans a voice. I think that's what's important, Quinny, and it's very unfortunate that they think we are part of the problem. I'm really keen to bring up some of these comments. Where's Albert Kidd when you need him? He's living in Australia, smell the glove. And maybe we need to invite him back come May time. I'm going to need all the help we can get. No fan media, no awkward questions. Simple. That's part of it, Kieran. The other part of it, unfortunately, is that they're trying to monetize their own content. They don't want to give us anything for free, and they would rather speak to publications like The Sun and the Daily Record than they would their own fans, which I think is bizarre. Shanklands, there's your moment of glory, right? We don't do walking away. I'm going to come to you, Quinny, because very early in the season you said, do not write Hearts off. Hearts are going to divide first and third place. Hearts are going to be in there, top two. You were saying they were going to be seconds. And we're sitting here now on the 7th of December. They're beating us home and away. This is real. I mean, again, going back to what Chris said, we had to do a low risk approach to today, I believe, because this is an opportunity today to give them momentum, and I think it will. Because obviously their results haven't been great as of late, but the absolute opposite can happen to us. So in terms of Hearts, explain to me what made you believe they would be a challenger this season, Quinny?
Well, I think the whole Tony Bloom thing kind of goes without saying. His introduction and influence on the team, kind of, again, just about everything he's had going for him. And as much as this is a Celtic channel, we're definitely not fans of McInnes. I don't think his record domestically can really be questioned to a certain extent. A very good recruiter within the league and done quite well. I would say I think the job he did with Kilmarnock was pretty impressive. Bringing them from the division below to then be like a top flight team on the budget that they had. But it's for stuff like this, because like as much as like at Kilmarnock and Aberdeen, it's a bit different, isn't it? He's a guy that, like, if you want someone to get your club to win away at Ross Counties and Dundees and know what it means to play in these different derby matches and go to Glasgow and try and get something, if you're like building a team in Scotland like Tony Bloom is, McInnes is kind of top of the shopping list for that in terms of experience, and someone that domestically is, he can kind of, build a team to beat anyone in the league, you would say, on his day. So it's just like it's one of those ones. And also a big part of it is that I believe, because of really all the stuff we're chatting about here, the inefficiencies of Celtic, Scottish football has probably got the biggest ROI potential in world football for spending very little and getting European qualification out of it, or being able to sell players for inflated values back into the continent. And it probably does kind of become the genesis of a lot of our frustrations, because we see how much the club could be doing better in so many different areas. So it was mainly down to that as much as anything. And I said to you on Monday as well, like, Tony Bloom's not on loan at Hearts, and if you think about what's going on in their changing room after that game today, like, McInnes will be in there telling them, we're real, we're here now. And, we've definitely made it. If there wasn't a title race on before today, 1,000% is on today. And that really does, again, the frustration I think for us as Celtic fans is it really epitomises the board's strategy with everything. Underestimating qualifiers, overestimating how good they'll be in the transfer window, banking on results before they come in and thinking, oh, it'll be fine, we'll win the league anyway. It doesn't matter if we change Martin O'Neill for Nancy this week or next week or 2 weeks from now. The same thing's going to happen. It doesn't matter if we buy guys at the beginning of the window or the end of the window. We'll still beat Kairat. It's that same kind of, half-baked, underestimating the situation attitude, I think, is, again, it's maybe a bit of the bedrock of a lot of the frustration that's in the chat.
Yeah, and the big thing that I always find when it comes to complacency, Sean, is if they didn't already realise that Hearts are the real deal this season, because we keep going back to this, Quinny. You said it in May. We keep going back to Quinny's prediction here. Then they should realise it now. And I don't think it's a case of them saying we can buy ourselves out of this, because I don't think we've got the track records of having that level of quality at the helm. And that takes us back to Paul Tisdale. So I actually think that we're in real trouble if we are unable to find a system that suits the personnel, and then to find the quality come January. I don't have a great deal of confidence that we have the people at the football club to find that quality. And that's a huge concern for me, because when you look at this season and the way that it has gone, Sean, with the unrest between the board and the fans, the fact that we're now playing under our third managerial regime and it's only December, and then we've got a January transfer window, as I say, that hasn't gone so well in recent years, we might end up losing this title. And in terms of a sea change, Tony Bloom himself didn't reckon it was a realistic thing until maybe 10 years down the line. We're half a season down and it's a realistic proposition now. But in terms of a sea change, it could really flip everything on its head in Scottish football if Hearts were to win this league.
To be fair, I actually don't think that Hearts are the quote-unquote real deal. I think they represent a team that's above the median in Scotland and don't have European football to contend with. And that's you see that year on year. We had the same thing with Aberdeen last year. No European football, new manager, above the median. They go on a run. Everyone gets their knickers in a twist, thinking that Aberdeen are going to challenge for the title, and then they disappear. I don't think, and I think if you look over the last 2 months, I think Aberdeen have picked up more points than Hearts. So I don't even I think it's more that Celtic have regressed to the mean than anything. I think we need to look at ourselves more than looking at Hearts. I don't think Hearts are any kind of, if you put Hearts in Europe, they're not going to do any better than Aberdeen are this year, right? I think it's just more Celtic are coming back to the pack, and that's the main issue. And I think you've said it before to me anyway, at least a few dozen times, Paul John, that all you need is a team to just be competent and get their proverbial stuff together for a long enough time to rise, not even above Celtic or Sevco, just to rise above the rest, the other 9. And if Celtic and any other Glasgow team have a down year, that's all they need to do. So maybe that's Hearts this year. I've actually not been convinced enough by Hearts to this point, to be honest. Even though they have beat us twice and not unconvincingly beat us twice. But I think it's more a reflection of where we're at rather than Hearts being breaking from the pack at the moment, to be honest.
No, you're right. We have spoken about that over the years. Every so often, there isn't a real quality about Celtic in most recent years. And I've always said that if one of these teams gets their house in order, then they would be able to beat just about every other team in the league. And that's obviously something that we're facing at the moment. There's a game in hand. Of course there is. There's a game in hand. But again, in terms of the goals, the goal difference, we would need to win that handsomely in order for us to leapfrog Hearts. Tisdale asleep at the wheel. Was he sleeping or was he meditating? I'm not quite sure, Chris. It wasn't a good look anyway. To see obviously a man who I would suggest is definitely a Paul Tisdale production in Wilfred Nancy. We said before the game, Chris, we're right behind him. Of course we are. We're 100% behind him, but he's moving into new territory again on Thursday night because he's got his first ever European game. And we're playing a top class outfit in Roma. Does he just stick to his guns, his identity, and go again, or does he approach it a different way? Do you think?
It's a hell of a question. I 100% agree with Sean. I think if we play the exact same system to the same level that we did today, we will get absolutely hammered against Roma. I can't see any other result. The drop in quality from what we've seen in previous matches was just too alarming. Some of the onus will be on the players. How quickly can they adapt to his tactics, his system, his training, his methodology? But you're not talking about a huge amount of time to do that. And I think that was such a dramatic change today. We said, I stand by what I said at the start. If it had worked, we'd all been elated. We could have come away with a statement win, and we'd have thought, right, that's it, Nancy ball or whatever you want to call it, it's here. But we got a reality check. And the reality check is that we have a deficiency of quality within the squad. We have a manager that has not had enough time to work with the players, it'll be interesting to see if this changes his assessment and therefore he'll adjust his tactics. Can he, as a manager, do that? And what it's highlighted is that we don't have someone that can make basic strategic decisions when it comes down to the short, mid, and long-term benefit of this football club, because we were on a winning run, we had momentum, and the decision makers had the opportunity to introduce a new manager in a much safer, lower risk way and keep a man at the helm, maybe even with Wilfried Nancy in the background, but keep a man, a club legend, a man who'd endangered so much good faith with the support and had got a bit of unity and a bit of positivity back. And instead, it's like, no, thanks for your service, off you trot, Martin, and we'll bring in a new fella and we'll give him the toughest 3 fixtures that he could have faced at the start of his tenure. Just somewhere, if you can find anyone that can make that make sense, then please bring him on the show, because it doesn't make sense to me.
I'm looking forward to asking Martin the question. Martin O'Neill, were you given the opportunity to stay longer? Would you have stayed longer? I'll ask the question, Chris, because it's one of the things that I am wondering. How is Strachan still there? Yeah, Gavin Strachan's on the iPad and Wilfried Nancy's on the whiteboards and his assistant's on the notepad. Fantastic.
Well, that was a huge surprise of today, because you could see clearly that Strachan is number 3 in the dugout. He's got his number 2 with him, and when they were trying to figure out who could solve this problem for us, it's turning to Gavin. And you could see the fear in his eyes a bit, couldn't you? In one of the bits where he was like, "Oh, so what do you think, Gavin?" He's like, obviously it wasn't a long clip, but it certainly caught my attention, and that's maybe one of the worrying bits about all this, because we didn't hear about some of the negotiating around bringing his team in, and Celtic wanted to keep a guy there, and it was Maloney or Strachan, I think some of the rumours were, and some other bits and pieces like that. And Strachan, no harm to the guy, I don't know him from Adam or anything, but he's never seemed to be the guy that's really been leading the coaching section. If anything, the perception and all the kind of things you've seen him is he's kind of side character more than anything. So I found that a worrying frame or two in the game when it came on.
Yeah, and I also think it speaks volumes that, you look at the people who survived the cull. I spoke about Tisdale before. Gavin Strachan's another one. Stevie Woods, I think Stevie Woods, he's a specialist coach, and he's done very, very well over a number of years. So I wouldn't probably throw him into the same category as that. Very
highly regarded by all the keepers that have been at the club,
Yeah,
they all speak very high. Yep.
Aye, absolutely. And the time he's been there, I think we've only had one flop, and that was Barkas. Everybody else has done well for the football club. In relation to Kieran's message on Facebook, the players need to start waking up. I thought they had under Martin O'Neill, Kieran. I thought that we had completely woken up as a club and as players. But we watched that again today, and it's going back. It's 3 or 4 steps back. At least Celtic will win their game in hand. I hope you're right, Alexander. I hope you're right. And thank you for supporting the channel, Andrew Phillips. It's always a pleasure to see you in the chat as well. Podcasts give us a voice. Yeah, and you don't have to agree with us, Jerry. You can disagree with us. We just like to keep it on an even keel when it comes to some of the stuff we have to put up on the socials. It's not so much like that in the comments. We get to know people and avatars and names, and there's nothing better when we're doing one of these fan zones, guys, and somebody comes up to you and says, "Oh, I tune in." And this happened just last week with Simon Fideni. There we go. Well, if he wanted to know what pressure is like, he'll know in the coming week. This is it. It's a very unforgiving environment at Celtic, and you've got to win. Final comment today is Rich Harrison, who says to the panel, "Would you rather win against Roma or St Mirren? Can only pick one. Think about your ambitions." My ambitions for Celtic is for us to have a vision of European success. I've spoken about this before. I'll come to Sean first, because what happens is it's almost as if our ambitions are tethered by the behaviour and the actions of the board. And it gets to the point that you're just desperate to win the league, and you would be happy to win the league by a point. At the beginning of the season, you've got these high-floating ideas about doing something in Europe, and you're ground down to the point where you realise it's unrealistic. It shouldn't be unrealistic to do so. I think if you lose the League Cup to St Mirren, the wheels come off. That would be my biggest concern. Whereas if you have a bad or an average result in Europe, the wheels don't come off as much. So that's my take on it. Sean, what about you?
Sorry, so your answer was St Mirren?
I would take the cup every time.
Yeah,
silverware success.
Yeah, I don't think we're set for Europe at the moment, and that's a sad indictment. And we talk about this. We talked about it. You can go back and search the archives. We're not the only podcast that talks about it. If you set your team up to do well in Europe, domestic success follows. So, in the moment, I don't think we're set for European aspirations. So I'll focus on the domestic.
It actually puts into focus, Chris, just how great that result was against Feyenoord, doesn't it? Because I agree with Sean, we're actually not in a good position right now for European football.
No, we're not, and I've said it all season long. I thought we just weren't equipped for Europe, and I still stand by that. With that said, I have a slightly different perspective on it. I think, and it goes to your point, Paul John, I think our ambition should be European success. So, if you were asking me which I would rather have, would be a famous European victory or a domestic cup that I think we could and should, as a club, be able to recover from. I'd probably take the European win. But I also get the point about silverware. And I think in the context of this season, I think St Mirren has to be the focus because, as I've said, we're just not equipped for Europe. The frustration is that we should be.
Yeah, and the thing with that as well, though, Chris, is in terms of a galvanising effect, a cup win can do that to you as well, Quinny. Especially, we've seen some examples of Ange. He wins the League Cup nice and early. We go on, and it builds from there. And Wim Jansen is another good example of that.
Yeah, I think you'd be taking the St Mirren game if you had one to choose all day. The Roma game is very easy to just walk into as a free hit in a lot of ways. And yeah, I think I would be taking the cup. In terms of like European success and the main ambitions of the club, the big picture stuff, which again, a lot of people are kind of back in the manager's corner on here. It is only the first 2 days of his reign.
Absolutely.
But I think the Europa League, like you guys have said, we're not even equipped for the Europa League. And really, for all intents and purposes, the points at Roma are the ones that we need the least. We need getting points at home at Utrecht is the massive thing we have to do in the last game. And if you can do something away at Bologna, which isn't that scary a tie, by the way, Bologna are maybe not quite the same team that was in the Champions League the year before, then that'll be the route to qualification. I don't think Roma plays any, and also if you win, different story, don't get me wrong, but it's not, I'm taking the final.
Taking the final. One final point then, guys, right? Because a lot is going to be made of this. I've not checked the socials yet. I'll do that later on. The whiteboard and the little markers and all this kind of thing, Sean. Forget the method. The bigger concern for me is the fact that we had to twice speak to the captain to get the message across. It was pretty clear that the message wasn't clear, and the whiteboard is going to become a meme, no doubt about it. But in terms of communication, it did seem that was one of the issues, that there was a disjointed nature to today's performance, and a team that was flowing and all seemed to be working together. And we were getting, I think, the best form in a while. The likes of Hatate has regressed in the last few days because we're trying to do something different. And it might take time for that to click, by which time we could be in a much worse position.
Yeah, and it might just be he's trying to force something that just can't be done by this group of players, We talked pre-match, and the words we used were brave. And when you apply hindsight to that, it might be that the words are arrogant and short-sighted. And that's probably too early to make that call, but that's certainly the way it appears in light of the result versus how we were pre-match.
Guys, just a point on that. With all the work that Paul Tisdale and his team have done to identify Wilfried Nancy and get him in for this game, would nobody have had the conversation with him to say, what's your ideas for your first match? Oh, I'm going to bum this. And for someone to turn around and say, listen, I don't think the squad can adapt that quickly. That's maybe not such a good idea. I mean, surely to goodness, a brief conversation with Martin O'Neill might have done that, might have accomplished that. Sure.
I agree with you, but he's dealing with the ex-manager of Stevenage. This is the issue, Chris. This goes back to the point we made in relation to the guy who's driving this. It's Paul Tisdale. Yeah. He doesn't understand Celtic. He doesn't understand the expectations and the standard of this football club. Someone like Martin O'Neill absolutely does. He absolutely does. So I agree with you. Quinny, what about yourself? You know, you're a forward-thinking football fan. You do look at, you know, modern techniques, etc. We've been a wee bit, I don't know, old school. Are we dinosaurs? Is Nancy the guy that knows what's going on here?
I think it's got every chance of working out to being a good appointment. You know, the main thing I can't get away from today is it is just so quick to come in and try and turn things around. And in terms of like giving them a wee quiet word before the team sheet goes out and going, you know, do you maybe not want to try a back four today? I don't think there's anyone that really should be, you know, going into that realm of trying to tell the manager what to do. To be honest with you, if you've given the guy the job, then it's on him. You know, it's his job, it's his decision. And you know, like director of footballs are.
Sorry, Connie.
But he spoke to O'Neill, but you know, so like I don't know who else would be coming in and saying to him, "Going to no do that," because again, I think that gets into the whole, you know.
Going to no do that. I've not heard that for ages. Going to no do that.
I just don't. I don't know who you would want that to be. I don't know if we want that to be a thing, you know, just as a thing that went through my head as you said it, you know, as like you kind of want to just give the guy the job and let him run.
What I was thinking, though, is part of the whole process between Paul. I mean, give him an evaluation of the squad and the squad's capabilities. Surely, to goodness, let him know what he's coming into face. Because at times I was watching him there, and I just thought he's looking and saying, "Why are they not able to do this?" And I'm kind of like, well, "Have you not watched what's going on this season? You know, none of us would have thought that team would have been capable of managing that much change." So you kind of think,
even in personnel, though, Nygren and Tuneki, for example, Chris, if you're just going to look at performances,
form,
you know,
look at form, exactly.
Yeah, they wouldn't have started for me. And again, I'm going to go back to something that Quinny said, right? So in the first half, Dyson gets a couple of decent chances. In the second half, Engel should burst the net with a header, right? And all these wee margins. So we're talking, we probably are, let's be honest, guys, we're probably talking slightly differently right now if we come away with something from the game. But we don't. We get beat, and that's the problem, and it's all about margins, right? So yeah, we move on to the next match. We will of course be here as we always are at 12:30 come Monday afternoon. Really looking forward to it. Let's get our teeth into this and see what the situation is, what the lay of the land is with the 4,000 plus live viewers on this Sunday afternoon. Thanks every one of you for getting involved. Give us a thumbs up on the YouTube channel, subscribe if you haven't done so already. And all that's left for me to say, Chris, Quinny and Sean, thank you for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.
Thanks, guys.
All the best.
There we go.